Australia's deadliest plants. What I've noticed since I've been making my videos, the long ones, they don't get the views of the short ones. Quick and punchy. So we're going to make a quick and punchy video about Australia's deadliest plants. Oh, hang on. There are more than 1,000 plants, native plants in Australia that will kill you. On top of 1,000 plants that will kill you, there are countless. They say countless because the scientists have never bothered to put a figure on the number of plants over that 1,000 that will cause you discomfort, stinging, rashes, nausea, diarrhea, tummy upsets. They describe it as countless. So the thing about Australia, I'm not going to get sidetracked about Australian animals. I could actually quickly talk about Australian snakes. So where we live here in this semi-arid region is like a lot of Australia, and that is there are no pythons. There are no snakes that catch their prey and strangle it. There are none. What there are, there's snakes that will kill you in a blink of an eye. There are snakes that will kill you, and if there was a line of 100 men, they go kill, kill. They're so venomous and they carry so much venom, they go down a line of 100 men and kill them all. Why is that? That is because prey is very difficult to find. Australia, dry, barren, most of it. You know, you see the tourist stuff of the beaches and the forest, Fraser Island, the rainforests of Queensland. That's a tiny percentage of Australia as a whole. And so, because it's so dry and barren and hot and dry, I mentioned dry and featureless, there's not a lot of creatures. So if you're a snake, you can't afford to see something and go to get it and it escapes. Bugger, I missed it. I'll look for the next one. No, hang on. There isn't the next one. When you see something, boom, you've got to get it. And so that's why they have evolved to be the deadliest snakes, because those snakes need to hit the thing with a powerful poison that will just kill it. And so that's why our snakes are so deadly. We live around here, live in fear really for the dogs, because all our snakes are deadly. The great thing is that when they hear you walking, the vibrations through the ground scare them off. You very rarely see a snake because they're so fast, they're gone before you get to them. I've been riding the lad many times out in the paddocks, and out of the corner of my eye, I've seen a snake shooting off into the distance because they hear the horses walking and they quickly take off. So the only time you ever hear of horses being bitten by our snakes and then dying is an unfortunate circumstance. If a horse gets bitten on the leg, the furry, hairy leg, they're pretty much going to be okay. But the trouble is when you get a boy like Cody, you might have seen another video where he's playing with a gate, trying to get a gate open. He's a very curious horse. Horses are pretty curious. And so when they go down, one of the main things they feel with, their lips are more like their fingers, human fingers. If they get bitten on the nose, then sadly it's going to kill them. But listen, I'm so sorry. This is supposed to be about Australia's deadliest plants. And I've told you about the snakes because the same thing applies to plants. Our ground it is so arid. It is such tough country to exist in. Those plants can't afford to grow and have something come along and eat them. And so they develop toxins and poisons. Over 1,000 of them have developed to the point where they are so poisonous they will kill a human being. Human being, you get to hospital, you can have some treatment, you should be right. A little kid, if a little kid, oleander for example, a little kid gets an oleander branch, leaf, chews on it, they're probably going to die before they get to hospital. It's a really dangerous plant. To the point oleander is so dangerous that if you have a big pile of oleander cuttings and leaves and you set fire to them, the bloody smoke is toxic. You can have poisoning issues from the smoke and fumes of burning oleander. That's just one of our plants. So the thing is, these plants it's Darwin, survival of the fittest, evolution, survival of the fittest. So the plants are deadly poison to help them survive, to deter other animals from eating them, and humans. And also what they find is that the shoots that come off them underground, those shoots tend to be even more deadly. Likewise, the tips, those little beautiful tips of new leaves, they tend to be super deadly as well. So, of 1,000 plants, John, I'm sorry I can't go into the whole list. They're all unpronounceable anyway, because you've got to remember all plants have got Latin names. What I am going to do, sadly, I'm going to have to refer to my notes now. I don't like doing this, but anyway, I'm going to have to refer to my notes. And the authorities, whatever you want to call them, the botanists, the people in charge of Australian plants, the one thing they say is the golden rule of Australian plants is never put an Australian plant in your mouth. If you hear banging, gale force wind out there, we're deep in the shed, but still things are banging. So never put an Australian plant in your mouth unless you absolutely know what it is, like a pineapple or something. So here we go, top of the list, the black bean. So the black bean has a beautiful big flower pod, looks glamorous, looks gorgeous, it's big. Pop it open, full of seeds. The seeds weigh as much as 30 grams each, and these pods are filled with them, so it looks a bit like a pomegranate. Black bean, deadly poison. Then we have one, they've given it a name, and couldn't have a more appropriate name because it's the strychnine tree. Every part of this tree, the bark, the sap, the tree, the wood, the leaves, everything, deadly poison, the strychnine tree. Now when you look at the strychnine tree, you want to go, or maybe I'll use this as a thumbnail, but go and look it up. You would think they were like small oranges. They're beautiful colour, they look lovely, lovely and round, a lovely looking fruit on them. Deadly poison. The angel's trumpet is yet another beautiful looking flower with large pods, large seeds, looks very attractive. This one even smells very nice, and that is another deadly. Speaking of deadly, the deadly nightshade. Our deadly nightshade has a few other names. It's the devil's berries, and it's also known as the death cherries. That's because that plant has what looks like beautiful black cherries on it, which are, the whole point of this video, deadly poison. And it's recorded in the warnings that one leaf from that tree can kill a grown adult human being. So I've already talked to you about the oleander, how particularly dangerous this is for children. But I'll tell you a quick story about the oleander, because in my very early days, in the 70s, I bought a house. When I bought that house, had a massive oleander right in the middle of the front lawn. So I went out there with some shears. This bush was about the size of a Mini. Everyone knows a Mini, whether it's the old one or the new one. So it's a big bush, size of a Mini car, Morris Mini. And I started with some shears, and I'm cutting the branches off, loading them in a trailer, work down till there's just these bare sticks, and then I start on it with an axe. And even as I'm cutting the branches off with the axe, I'm getting lower and lower, because my plan is to really try and get well below ground level and get it all out. Now what happened? I was a young man, didn't know better, full of energy, full of strength, thought it was great to be just, I can axe all day. And I got some blisters on my hands, and then the blisters all burst, and I just kept going, because at the time, I didn't feel any pain, and I just kept going. And then my hands, I looked at my hands, they turned bright red, and virtually over the next 30 minutes or so, my hands just started getting bigger and bigger, until they looked like something out of one of those cartoons where somebody blows up or wears a fat suit. And I had these two massive hands with massive fingers that I could hardly move. It looked hilarious. I've got to confess, it didn't hurt much, but it was damn scary what happened to my hands. And basically what that was that the poisons and toxins from the oleander where I'd been chopping it had got in to my skin where I burst those blisters and then just kept chopping away. So there's an example of how dangerous the oleander is if that was just through surface contact through burst blisters. So then we've got the milky mangrove, coastal, deadly poisonous. We've got the Gympie Gympie. The thing I like about the Gympie Gympie, it's a good name, isn't it, the Gympie Gympie. So wherever country you live in, you're going to have nettles. You know, nettles, where you're walking along a green plant and you brush against it and, oh, ow, that hurts. And when you look, you can't see. But if you look really close, you'll probably see tiny, weeny little prickles, hardly visible by the naked eye. By God, they hurt. And so what the Gympie Gympie is just an Australian nettle. But more than that, just the wind came through the shed. Gympie Gympie we're talking about, and more than just being any old average nettle, the Gympie Gympie, let's bring back that Morris Mini again, the Gympie Gympie is a nettle that grows to the size of a mini car. It's a huge thing. Okay, it's huge. You're not going to walk into it blindly, but the thing is, the aroma is toxic and poison, not to the extent it's going to kill you, but to the extent where once again those authorities, those warnings say, if you're going to an area prevalent with Gympie Gympie, take an antihistamine, a hay fever tablet, before you go, because you will have a reaction to the good old Gympie Gympie. That brings me to introduce, well, we've been talking about those 1,000 plants I've been talking about and touched on a couple of them. They're the native plants that are going to kill you. Then we've also got introduced plants. Thank you very much to those morons that introduced to Australia. Customs in Australia, you try and bring in a plant or a fruit or a vegetable or a piece of meat and you get a slap on the wrist, you might get a fine. You should get put up against the wall and shot. We have got no foot and mouth in this country. We have got no rabies in this country because of our strict quarantine. But before we had strict quarantine, the morons brought into this country things like foxes and rabbits and cane toads. Oh, let's bring cane toads to Australia. They'll eat the spiders in the sugarcane, except they had no predator, they're deadly poison, and they're spread like wildfire across Australia. Anyway, so it also happens with plants that the morons brought. How unprofessional is that, Steve? No, they're morons. They brought Patterson's Curse, also known as Salvation Jane. So if you look at fields of Patterson's Curse, you will see gorgeous colour. The whole hill looks magnificent. It looks glorious because in Australia it's gone rampant, out of control, has no natural predator, and let me just try and do this. It's deadly poison to horses. Yes, Patterson's Curse, great looking plant, deadly poison to horses. Thank God where we live around here, we don't have it yet. Not too far away, only a couple of 100 kilometres. It's infested with it through the Adelaide Hills, but we don't have it yet. Terrible for horses, shocking thing for horses. But also, what we have is a thing called Cape weed, the Cape dandelion. So I'm sure we all know what dandelions are. And the Cape dandelion is a attractive looking yellow daisy, looks quite pretty. Comes from South Africa. It thrives in bad soil, in hammered soil. So if you have a paddock that's been hammered by sheep, they've eaten it right down, they've eaten away the roots, you're going to find the old Cape daisy, Cape weed, is going to it's just going to thrive there because that's what it loves, and it will explode. Why did they bring it? I say morons. Why did they bring capeweed? Because capeweed, you can't get rid of it. You can hardly kill it. It will thrive. You don't have to feed it. You don't have to water it. You don't have to fertilise it. And in harsh times, yes, it will keep your sheep alive. So that's why it was introduced originally, except now, of course, it's gone rampant. It spreads everywhere. It's a shocking weed. And, of course, that is the one that got Cody. Unfortunately, that's what happened. We had it explode here in our paddocks. Was trying to monitor the horses and what they were eating, and unfortunately it is clear that he suffered from this nitrate. If they eat too much of it, it's hard to believe. He looks like butter wouldn't melt in his mouth, but he's a pig and he would eat himself to death. And you've got to confess when you make a mistake, was not monitored enough to the point where he ate too much capeweed and he got the nitrate, too much nitrate, he got poisoned, and he was pretty crook. Brought back to health now, but that was the old capeweed. So John, this turned out to be, I'm trying to keep my videos short for crying out loud. Obviously can't do it. Australia's deadliest plants, sidetracked into mushrooms, sidetracked into introduced species. Hope that answered the question, John. If nothing else, you can go off searching for the other 994 that never got mentioned. Cheers, till next time.